Lacson is recognized.
the more exciting portion, Mr. President. Before I proceed with the indulgence of the distinguished sponsor and the body, please allow me to present the rationale and justifications of my proposed individual amendments for better appreciation of the body. There's no better analogy to describe VAT exemptions than that of a balloon that we are trying to inflate to make it float, but which we keep on puncturing with tiny and not so tiny holes to deflate it, hence preventing that balloon to take off. Just like our economy that relies very heavily on taxes, on revenues, aka taxes, we seem to always lack the resources to build the needed infrastructure to propel the economy. Why? Because we intentionally refuse to plug the holes that have been there for decades. And worse, we punch in more holes. Having said that, Mr. President, my proposed amendments are premised on the sad reality that while the Philippines has the highest VAT rate at 12% among all our ASEAN neighbors, at please show the slide. Are you ready? Most, if not all, the materials that we will be presenting came from the DOF and the STSRO. Thank you. As I said, while we have the highest VAT rate, we also have the most number of exemptions. In fact, if we add all the lines of, please proceed. If we add all the lines of exemptions of all the countries, namely Indonesia at 37, Thailand at 35, Vietnam, can we dim the lights, please? Vietnam at 25 and Malaysia at 14, their combined total will only be 111. The Philippines has 143 lines of exemptions or exemption, both from the tax code and the numerous special laws. I recall the first time that our group, or the batch of senators who met with Secretary of Finance Sonny Dominguez and his staff, Yusek Carchu was there, I posited the idea that based on the nominal GDP of the country at that time, I think it was 2016, which was at 14+%, 14 to 15 trillion pesos. Assuming that we do away with all the exemptions easily, the government could collect 1.4 trillion pesos on that alone. Having said that, doon na po tayo mag-establish ng ating starting point. So, Mr. President, I'll skip first the reduction because I'm going to propose towards the end of my amendments, I'm going to propose the reduction of the VAT rate from 12 to 10%, no, to give the general public a breathing space. No? Okay. Ito yung sasabi natin na ang nominal GDP projected for year 2018, 17.456 trillion, yun ang low, and a high of 17.775. So, let's assume for a while, no? Let's close our eyes and imagine na walang exemptions. So, hindi na tayo kailangan magpasa pa ng ibang mga tax measures, except ito lang, sa VAT lang, and reduce the VAT rate to 10% from 12. Easily, we can generate 1.7 trillion pesos. But, you know, we all know that that's impossible. So, ang trust natin is to reduce the number of exemptions. Imagine, 143 exemptions all in all. While our neighboring countries, masyado mababa. Ang proposal namin, Mr. President, distinguished sponsor, is to reduce the number of exemptions, the lines of exemption, to something like 65. So, alisin natin yung 78 or 84, both from the tax code and the special laws. Mataas pa rin tayo, almost double pa rin ng pinakamalapit, which is Indonesia. So, here are ang limitations lang po na gagawin natin is limit exemptions to raw food, agriculture, health, and education. By the way, this has been coordinated with the DOF and also with our own SRO. So the battle cry, Mr. President, is lower rate, broader base. Yun ang formula that we will follow. So if we look at the slides, it's lower rate and broader base. And even if we revert to 10% VAT rate, we can still generate an incremental revenue of 117 billion pesos compared to the distinguished sponsors version, which is at how much? 14 for what?
With the amendments, Mr. President, I think we're at 45 billion.
45 billion.
Yes, yes.
So we will generate more than 117 billion incremental revenue compared to the sponsors version or the committee's version of 45 billion pesos.
Corrected, Mr. I was corrected by Masa 48 po. 48.
Oh, 48. Sige, nakatawad pa. Okay. So please, next slide. Over the years, if we notice, laging packet naman yung ating GDP growth eh. So, kaya naman siguro nating magbaba ng 10% from 12% VAT. Kasi ang exemption, while we maintain that we should give some industries or some sectors the needed incentives by way of VAT exemptions, actually hindi naman talaga libre yung exemption. Exemptions are not really free, no? Because other people or other taxpayers will have to shoulder it, no? Pinapasa lang. So next slide. Okay. With that, Mr. President, here are my proposed individual amendments. On page 25, unahin natin section 23. Page 25, delete paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 from lines 1 to 13. On the same page, delete the entire paragraph number 5 from line 17 to 19. From page 25, line 26, delete the paragraphs beginning with the word provided up to and including the period on page 26, line 13. And then renumber the paragraphs accordingly. Thus, section 106, A, open close parenthesis 2, open close parenthesis A, comma, open close parenthesis B, and open close parenthesis C of the NIRC as embodied in section 23 of the proposed measure will now read as follows. Open close parenthesis 2, the following sales by VAT registered person shall be subject to 0% rate. A, export sales. The term export sales means the sale and actual shipment of goods from the Philippines to a foreign country, irrespective of any shipping arrangement that may be agreed upon, which may influence or determine the transfer of ownership of the goods so exported and paid for in acceptable foreign currency or its equivalent in goods or services and accounted for in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Open close parenthesis, BSP. 2. The sale of goods, supplies, equipment, and fuel to persons engaged in the international shipping or international air transport operations, semicolon, provided, comma, that the goods, comma, supplies, equipment, and fuel shall be used for international shipping or air transport operations. C, or B, sales to persons or entities whose exemption under special laws or international agreements to which the Philippines is a signatory effectively subject such sales to 0 rate, semicolon, and C, sale of gold to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, BSP. Section 108B of the NIRC as embodied in Section 25 of the bill No, I so move, Mr. President.
Yes, yes. So
That's the first amendment.
yes, the first. So it now shortens section 106 of the NIR, section 20. So what is the response of the sponsor?
I thought it was still an overview, Mr. President. There were so many amendments. Is that the desire of the
That's the
proponent
first amendment.
to take it up all together?
No, he amended one section entire.
One section.
Yes. It consists of deletions. And the overall purpose, Senator Lacson, is to limit the zero rating, right? That's
Yes.
the purpose, yes.
With apologies to the good sponsor for his very good work and very good intentions, we feel that the country is not yet ready for this amendment. I think in a year or two we'll be ready, Mr. President. But given that the need for revenue and the transitioning, we're transitioning from a system where we're used to giving exemptions, and slowly we are repealing these exemptions, especially with the tool, the TIMTA, where we can now monitor what we've given away, and we don't want any more free riding and exemptions. We want to close it up, and we want to use the money to give it to worthy sectors. I regret and I apologize to...
I just would like to remind the distinguished sponsor that this is the version of the DOF, the original bill, to limit the exemptions or zero rate to direct exporters.
Yes, we
So
accept
you
that.
want to retain the zero rate to even to suppliers, Mr.
We accept that,
President?
Mr. President, but we had hearings on this, and even the exporters clamored for a transition period because they said, given the present condition of the refund system, they would die, in effect. They would get out of their businesses. That's what they said. Because that's why what we did is, in this provision, we placed a safeguard that the BIR must first reach a certain level of performance. They must be able to process VAT refunds in 90 days. They must the government must ensure that all VAT refunds are paid. This was your amendment,
Yes,
which we accepted
that is correct.
by December 2019.
2019.
And we were also protecting the BPOs and the PEZA zones, Mr. President, which are the top job-creating sectors
We're
of the
not
country.
there yet, Mr. President.
Yes. No, but it's kasama ho
This
yan sa
only-
ano eh.
Yes, of course. This is related, no?
Kasama ho sa
But we are trying to limit the
yung
zero rate.
tinatanggal po sa kasama ho sa tinatanggal ho na provision, and they came to us to ask for specific provisions which would ensure that their tax treatment would not be touched, especially the zero rating of sales to ecozones. Sales to ecozones are deemed direct exports since ecozones are considered separate customs territories. Under the destination principle, goods consumed and services rendered outside the country should be subject to zero rate. And the need to codify this stems from the amendment that export sales under EO 226 will no longer be subject to zero rate upon the establishment of an enhanced VAT refund system. At meron na ho tayong TIMTA where we can monitor the leakages if ever. So I think we're in the transition stage, Mr. President. So we placed safeguards in this provision. Pagka na-repeal ho yun, and we go immediately, baka hindi pa tayo handa at kawawa ho yung ating mga exporters, yung mga ibang industriya po natin.
But the leakages come from, the BIRs finding difficulties in plugging the leakages if we include the suppliers in the zero rate. Anyway, I will yield the floor to Senator Recto.
With the permission of the two gentlemen, at the onset, let me state for the record that I support the amendment of Senator Lacson. In fact, if he did not propose his amendment, I would propose him. Because frankly speaking, in any country in the world where VAT is a system, all exports, all zero rated should be for foreign exchange or direct exporters, goods, halimbawa manufactured dyan, and for services, BPO industry. That's how a VAT refund system should work. Let me give you an example. When any of us here travel abroad, and bumili ka halimbawa ng produkto in Europe VAT system, bigyan ka ng resibo at paglabas mo ng bansang airport, deemed export sales, you can get a refund. Okay? So how should it work in actual exports? Okay? It is only the exporter, the supplier of the exporter has a VAT, the exporter pays the VAT, then he gets a refund from the government. The reason why the gentleman is saying that it is ang problema ng exporter dito is the VAT refund system. Now, we have a proposed amendment at the appropriate time for a more efficient, effective VAT refund system, which we discussed yesterday, and the proposed language for that found later on in this section. I'll give you an example, Mr. President. An amount equivalent to 5% of the total value added tax collection of the BIR and the BOC for the immediately preceding year shall be automatically appropriated annually and shall be treated as a special account in the general fund for the purpose of funding or VAT refund. Yung binayaran ng exporter sa gobyerno gets a refund from government, automatic appropriation, dapat yan. There's another section here later on that within 90 days, if the BIR or BOC doesn't act, automatic babayaran siya. Parang utang ng gobyerno yan based on our system. And that's how it works everywhere in the world. So I support, and one last point, Mr. President, as I did also mention prior, one of the biggest problems for smuggling today, smuggling is one of our biggest problems. By adopting this and subsequent amendments later on, malaki mawawala sa smuggling sa mga ports natin. A big leakage is really found also in our special economic. Halimbawa, if the theory is a special economic zone as a separate cost category, then pag pinasok mo yung oil, special economic zone, non-vatable yan, non-excise din yan. Both, wala. And then that can be shipped outside of the special economic zone, either by shipping, by land, by truck, anywhere in the country. So that is the problem. And that's why I support Senator Lacson. They're only on this side pa lang, on the zero. That the idea is to limit it to direct exporters and as far as goods and supplies for international shipping and international air transport. Because all over the world, walang VAT din naman, or zero-rated talaga, ang international carriers, international shipping at international air transport. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Tiveros.
President, may I also make it a that I support the proposed amendment of the good gentleman from Cavite to reduce the VAT rate to 10%. Also because at a later time after that he will still propose, I will propose a further amendment to further reduce the VAT rate some years down the road, pegged to the VAT take as a percentage share of our GDP achieving a certain level. Also because that will make us compliant or consistent with the existing rates in the ASEAN region. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Escudero.
President, just a clarification. The motion is to limit the zero rating. We're not yet on the reduction from 12 to 10.
Not yet.
Not yet. So if at all what we're voting upon is to limit the zero rating to certain services.
To direct exporters.
Yes. Only to direct exporters.
And we will be gaining 24 billion 100 million as a matter of fact.
May I ask confirmation of the sponsor of that? Because I have my own balance sheet. So this is at how much? 24 billion?
We'll gain 24.1 billion pesos for zero rating. This computation
for limiting the zero rating.
Yes. This computation came from DOF itself.
Para
It's
ho pag nag-compute
24.1
kami ng mga ibabawas sa iba
24.1.
We confirm the figure, Mr. President, but we'd like to say that it's not just revenue at stake here. It's also reputational collateral of the Philippines. Also the message that we're sending to the BPOs who will lose their zero rating. They're located in PEZA zones. So it's much more than just revenue at stake here, Mr. President. We just
Mr.
like to place that
President,
on record.
marami pa pong tax incentives ang mga BPOs. Hindi po talaga sila sinisiro, no? Through the years, for 17 years, the government has supported the industry through income tax holidays, no? Of course, VAT exemptions, reduce income taxes in lieu of other taxes, and so forth and so on. So,
President,
Just to
Just
put
to
on
wind up,
record,
Mr.
with the
President,
indulgence of the gentleman from Sorsogon, also it's the exporters, the BPOs who are located in the eco zones. They'll be the main guys affected here, Mr. President. Just to put it on record. Yeah.
Are we there already, Mr. President? I think the proposal is still
zero
on-
ratings.
Sorry?
Zero rate for direct exporters.
For both goods and services.
Services.
Wala pa ho tayong services, di ba? Goods pa lang yung motion.
Goods, yeah.
Goods pa lang nga.
Yeah.
Wala pa yung services.
Mr. President,
The BPO that the sponsor is mentioning is still not yet included in the motion of Senator Lacson.
Sama pa ho sila kasi apektado ho rin sila eh. Sale and of goods. Because they are the economic zone. Because they're located, many of them are PEZA locator.
Pero services yung BPO eh.
Apektado yung sale of goods po sa kanila. They also buy goods. So it's a sector where, although it's not the bulk of their expenses, their bulk of their business is services, apektado pa rin ho sila.
Do you have the figure insofar as how much they will be hit?
Don't have it right now, Mr. President.
if I
I
may,
yield the floor, Mr. Chairman, while they're getting the figure. Mr.
Yes.
President, while they're getting the figure.
with the permission of the gentleman on the floor. Mr. President, I'd just like to ask this question, no? If the good sponsor, I'm sure you've had your hearings and we all know the industry. Yung isa kong naalala kong naibanggit ng ibang industry association, the PEZA zone, is that they currently purchase from suppliers from outside of the PEZA zone.
Yeah.
And because of the zero rating, the prices of those goods are competitive for them. Yung naibanggit po sa akin nung ibang industry associations is that if you added 10% or 12% to the prices of goods coming from outside, they would just import products.
Yeah. Yes.
And in fact, Mr. President, the only reason why they buy from the local economy is because nagiging mas mura siya because wala po yung VAT. No, I don't know, and I would like to know the opinion of DOF and the chairman here. So, Mr. President, sinasabi po nila, at the end of the day, sila po, more or less, makaka-survive po sila because they have other options. But this is, in their estimation, 230 plus billion pesos worth of economy to the local suppliers na potentially mawawala dun sa local businessmen.
Upstream.
Yes, I don't know if you subscribe to that, Mr. President.
Thank you. I thank you for that contribution because that point came out in the hearings. And that's true. They're saying they will have to import. So, apektado po yung mga local industries. And the DOF, ang point naman ng DOF, minsan dinadaya nung mga nagbebenta. Kasi hinahalo nila yung, they're entitled to incentives pagka binenta nila sa ecozone. Tapos dinodoktor daw yung libro. Hinahalo, and then hindi na matrace ng DOF o BIR ano yung nabenta sa ecozone or sa BPO, alin yung nabenta sa labas o inside the customs territory. Sa akin, that's why we came up with the compromise that they will lose that zero rating once the BIR has an efficient system with the conditions we mentioned earlier. So that the refund must be processed within 90 days and all pending refunds, pending as of this moment, must be paid by December 2019.
Mr.
So yun yung compromise formula po ng komite.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. Just as you're computing the request of the gentleman from Sorsogon, would DOF have a number on how much of the local economy is supported by the locators inside PEZA zones? So we just know, Mr. President, magkano ba yung pinag-uusapan natin na potentially mawawalang negosyo kung dumagdag po yung presyo ng bilihin dun po sa mga nasa loob ng eco. Would you have that number, Mr. President?
I don't have that number.
But
Mr.
that would be definitely in the billions.
We're asking the DOF if they have the number,
Yes.
Mr.
When you're ready,
President.
Mr. President.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Again, I'd like to remind the body that ang pag-usapan natin dito is 4.1 billion pesos.
in foregone revenues if we don't approve this amendment.
Yes, Senator Aquino.
Mr. President, it's always a trade-off, Mr. President, and this is something that the gentleman from Batangas always tells us, no? It's a trade-off between revenue and the local economy, no? How much of the local economy will be affected. And that's why, Mr. President, if we are to make this decision, we would like to know, yes, we can collect 24
How
billion
much of the
by
locals
changing,
are
but how much of the
affected?
local economy will be affected here, Mr. President?
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, if I may, if we remove the zero rating, whether they get it from here or abroad, correct me if I'm wrong, they would still be subject to either the 12 or the 10. Ano man ang mapag-agree natin. Minus the shipping pa nga, if ever, kung kukunin nila sa labas. So, how will the local economy be negatively
Mr. President,
impacted?
we're not talking about the suppliers anymore. They'll survive. Sorry, we're not talking about the locators anymore. They'll survive because they have other options. But to put up their products, their businesses, they buy from the local economy. Sila po yung titinan ho natin na baka mawalan po ng negosyo. And you're looking at possibly, billions and billions of suppliers who will lose their business, no?
What I'm saying, Mr. President, is if they get it from outside and we remove their zero rating, whatever it is they get from outside will be subject to the same rate as what they're getting from here.
Yes, Mr. President, but the local suppliers to these locators will lose business.
No. From the point of view of the BPO in the BPO company, it's the same because they will now pay 10%. Whether they buy it from outside, they buy it from here,
Yes, Mr. President.
they will still pay 10. So why, the logic is, why still get it from outside if they still have to add shipping cost, then get it here.
Mr.
Hindi sila
President,
makakamura kumbaga.
my understanding, Mr. President, is that the importation would be more attractive to them than if this would be taken out. So which is why, Mr. President, gusto kong tanungin if this is also the analysis of DOF on the matter.
May we hear from the sponsor, Mr. President?
Sorry, what was the question, Mr. President? Yeah.
If you remove the zero rating, if they get it from outside or get it locally, subject to the same VAT rate, if at all 10 or 12.
Yes, but I think the point is with the advantageous treatment under the zero rating, it's the local industries who have an advantage. And Senator Bam's point is if they lose their zero rating, they will buy from outside. I think that's
Why
the point.
is that if it's subject to the same rate?
Because the price outside it might be cheaper, Mr. President.
But if it's cheaper, you have to factor in among others the transportation cost, the shipping cost, and other duties. All.
Mr. President,
Well, yun ang sabi sa amin ng mga exporter at BPO. They would prefer to buy it from the locals and they're worried that the loss of the zero rating would jeopardize these businesses. And
Mr. President, just to add to the discussion with the permission of the two gentlemen, it is more expensive to ship from Mindanao to Manila. So that's a local exporter from Mindanao to Manila. Then it is from abroad. You're getting from China to Batangas, China to Manila port. So it will be disadvantageous for the local producer. Shipping is more expensive in the Philippines. Within the
President,
Philippines.
with the permission of my colleagues, maybe to help in the confusion. One is, I do not see, the idea here is that everything that comes into the port, magbayad ka ng VAT, with the exception only of agricultural products in its original state, number one, books. At the appropriate time, I think we should include medicines, exempted, books, medicines, agricultural products in its original state. Yun lang. Everything else is vatable. No exemption. Now, same thing here. On the issue of jeopardize a local industry, that is not true as suppliers to exporters or suppliers to BPO industries. It's not true because the importer who is a supplier to or exporter, pagpasok ng goods niya, magbabayad din siya ng 12%. The indirect, but that has nothing to do with the tax. That's competition. As far as the tax is concerned, when you import 12%, bayad ka ng VAT, the exporter uses that as a refund. If he buys it locally, domestically, he pays the supplier 12%, same. Bayaran siya ng gobyerno na refund. That's how it should operate. That's the point, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, if I may, that presupposes, Mr. President, the importation price and the local price is the same. But unfortunately, Mr. President, as what Senator Zubiri had said, it's not. It's usually cheaper to actually bring it in from outside. So, kung mas mura po yung galing sa labas at wala po yung advantage na to, it will jeopardize the local economy.
To address those concerns, those are issues of competition, productivity, mahal ang kuryente natin, so posibleng mas mahal yung produkto dito, but you address that on other issues, not on the VAT system. The VAT system is not there to address the problems of competition. The VAT system is there as a consumption tax. Now, why zero-rated? Because when you export, all our exporters here na nag-export sa ibang bansa, pagdating naman doon, magbabayad din siya ng VAT doon. That's how it works. All over the world, magbabayad din siya doon. Now, this section only talks about goods. Wala pa tayo sa BPO services yun. That's section 108, if I'm not mistaken. 107 is exempted. Zero-rated means you get a refund. Export. Huh? And then mamaya, exemptions, and then services naman, may zero-rated din yung services, BPO. Just take a look at one section here in the current law. It's a glaring smuggling already. Sale of raw materials or packaging materials to export-oriented enterprises whose export sales exceed 70% of total annual production. Why 70%? Ibig sabihin, sinasabi na rin natin dito, may 30% smuggling na. It's as simple as that. It is very glaring. Okay, now, you sale and actual shipment of goods to special economic zones and free ports. This is one of the big loopholes. Like I said, if you treat this as a separate customs territory, ibang bansa, halimbawa, let me explain. Bumili ka ng langis, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll give many examples. Langis, pinasok mo sa pesa. Wala ng VAT, wala ng excise, ilalabas ko, kumita na ako. And that is what is happening today. O, hindi lang yan. Kotse, aeroplano, chopper. How do you think all of these choppers and airplanes come in? Yachts. Nagbabayad ba ng excise tax yan? Meron sa tax code. How do they bring it in? You think Manila Yacht Club, bayad sila dito eh. Special Economic Zone. Ngayon, assuming sabihin natin, cosmetic surgery, pinag-usapan dito, lagyan natin ng excise. Pag si Vicky meron na sa Manila, may excise. Ilagay mo sa pesa, wala. That is a big loophole. That's what I'm saying. And that's why, now, I may defer, but I'm willing to listen to Senator Lacson. Because I've seen all these numbers also. We have the same amendments. Now, I may doubt to bring the VAT down to 12 to 10, baka pwede 12 to 11. I don't think it will be, the numbers will not add up to bring it down to 10. I think so. But with all these amendments, if our colleagues will be patient with me and Senator Lacson, is that I think by doing all of this, ang laki na mawawala smuggling sa custom. That is one of the biggest problems that we have. Bago nga yung commissioner natin ngayon eh. Diba? Anong pinag-usapan natin? Now, this will not solve other problems like smuggling of shabu. Walang VAT excise ang shabu. This will not solve that problem. You cannot expect that this law will solve the problems that are not VAT related. competition. Shipping from Mindanao to Luzon has nothing to do about that. There might be an effect if we increase taxes on bunker fuel. And that's why I'm saying we should not. So, mamaya pagdating sa petroleum, maybe we can address some of those.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I may, with the permission of Senator Recto, Mr. President, ang sinasabi ko lang ho siguro dito ay lahat po ng mga bagay-bagay na ito apektado po. No? May connections po ito sa iba't ibang mga aspeto ng ating lipunan, aspeto ng ating ekonomiya. Mahirap pong sabihin na theoretically, VAT has nothing to do with that, or it has nothing to do with competition. But the truth is, Mr. President, a number of these exemptions are rightly or wrongly being used, or is actually a competitive advantage for some industries. I mean, ganun ho talaga, no? I mean, I used to be the chairman of trade. Senator Miggs is the chairman of trade now. We have to take this perspective, Mr. President. Kaya ang tanong ko lang po, and maybe the good sponsor will be able to help us out. I'm sure he did his homework. I'm sure nakapag-analyze po sila. Will taking out this exemption dun po sa suppliers of locators and ecozones, will it affect the local economy? Will it be as dangerous as it was portrayed to us by the industry associations? Or, in effect, Mr. President, hindi naman talaga. And we will listen to the sponsor on this matter. Because, in truth, Mr. President, we do want to support Senator Lacson and Senator Recto's proposals. No, we do want to support it, but we're afraid of the unintended consequences, Mr. President. Baka po may gawin tayo dito, may unintended consequence, magdulot po yan ng pagdidelikado ng mga kumpanya po natin, mga negosyo. It might yield as contraction of companies, of the economy, of jobs. Ito ho naman yung kinakatakutan po natin. So I would like to hear from the sponsor, Mr. President. I'm sure napag-usapan to sa mga hearings po natin. Will it be dangerous to the local economy, or at least to those who are supplying now to the PEZA zones, Mr. President?
That is our impression based on what we heard during the porters, those located in the PEZA zones. In fact, hindi makapagsalita yung ibang officials, pero after the hearing, bubulong sa akin, sir, okay yan, kasi delikado talaga, baka mawala yung atin. And ang tanong sa akin ng isang trade official, he didn't want to speak officially, he said, ano bang worth ng ating reputational collateral? Is it worth 20 billion? Is it worth 30 billion? Once nasira yun, parang ang hirap. So, but you know, Senator Recto is correct also. It's not strictly VAT related, but I think Senator Aquino put it well when he said that all these things are interrelated, and they see this zero rating as part of their competitive advantage here in the country.
If at all, just
and,
one last final
if I just may just finish,
when you're done,
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
And that's why we're willing to move towards. In fact, if you read the provision,
Correct.
it's moving towards what Senator Lacson and Senator Recto want, but with a transition period.
Correct.
Kasi feeling nga natin, hindi pa handa tayo mag-i-refund yung lahat ng kailangan po ng ating mga negosyante.
Mahig naman ako sa
Yes.
sistemang yun.
So that's why we have a transition. Because we're moving towards the point where Senator Lacson and Senator Recto want to get to. Except we don't, except may masasaktan dyan eh. Yun ang point dun eh. And gusto natin, pag landing nila, medyo malambot ng konti. Huwag naman biglang mawawala ng negosyo, biglang mawawala ng trabaho. Yun lang po, Mr. President.
I agree. And one last point on this issue. The effect here will be a cash flow issue on the part of the exporter. And later on, when we get to that section, on the BPO. Yan ang kinatatakutan nila. And that is the reality. Why is it a cash flow issue? Because today, when the exporter or the BPO buys, their supplier is non-VAT. That supplier all is zero rated. That supplier also, whether he sells to an exporter or not, non-VAT din siya doon. That's where the leakage is. Now that tatanggalin natin yung supplier, it's just the exporter, he pays the VAT in advance. It's a cash flow issue. And then he gets a refund. It's just like you and I. You have a business. VAT is a prepaid tax. And then it's creditable. The input, output. It's a cash flow issue. So same for the exporter and same for the BPO. Ang talagang kinatatakutan ng exporter at ng BPO, it's not these issues eh. Ang kinatatakutan nila, baka hindi sila bayaran ng gobyerno, yung refund. That is the main issue. And that's why, at the appropriate time, let's find the language, and I am saying I prepared the language, automatic appropriation dahil utang ng gobyerno yun eh. Dapat bayaran ng gobyerno eh. So with that, thank you very much, Mr.
President, if I may, yung tama si Senator Recto, it's a cash flow issue. But ang sinasabi nga ng mga exporters and suppliers, cash flow is everything. Kung hindi ka mabayaran, wala, magsasara ka na, di ba? You know, that's why we place those conditions para ma-ensure na mabayaran sila. And their cash flow is addressed, Mr. President.
The situation is that the proposed amendment has not been accepted by the sponsor. That's correct. Mr. Sponsor, you did not accept, right?
Yes, with regrets and apologies, Mr. President, yes.
What's the pleasure of the
And
movement?
I propose that we divide the House, Mr. President.
President,
Senator Gordon?
I just arrived and I'm just trying to follow the conversation. I have reservations about this simply because I was listening to the comments of Senator Aquino. I thought were well taken. We're not the sweetest smelling guy in the block. We're not competitive right now. If you VAT sales going to our export processing zones, they will just go to another country. Why will they stay here? They're still in ASEAN, which has a free trade agreement already. And when they go to Vietnam, which has lesser power cost, lesser labor cost, we might end up being the loser, losing employment, losing opportunities for our people. I just want to make sure we understand where we're headed here. Because if we do this, like I say, we're not only changing the rules in the middle of the game, which we're become very famous for, and when we do this, we might lose the employment, we might lose the opportunities. I am not one that will argue on the basis of fear, but that is the reality of the situation. And besides, Mr. President, even if we say we're going to refund, our record on refunding is abysmally bad. It takes years before you can refund, if you can even get a refund, Mr. President. So I really am hoping that we could understand the situation very well, so that we know that there will be, as Senator Aquino put it, unintended consequences. No, the consequences will happen. And when that happens, we will be the loser for it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, we are not yet competitive, we are not yet ready. Matagal na natin naririnig yan eh. 2000, when will we ever be competitive and ready, Mr. President? Yan na lang lagi natin naririnig na dahilan or excuse or alibi. We're not yet ready, we're not yet competitive. And besides, di ba yung economy natin, Mr. President, ano to eh, services-oriented tayo eh. And we're talking of VAT, and we're talking of goods, di ba? And besides, BIR is really finding difficulties, kaya ang laki ng leakages because of, complications. Kaya ang daming tumatapon eh. With that, Mr. President, may I request for 1 minute suspension? Kasi dumami na po yung boboto sa kabila eh. Nagdatingan eh. I think they're closing ranks. The seatmates, the daddy and the mommy are here, so 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Can I just one intervention?
Pasin ko lang po, Mr. President, babaan eh.
Can we let the sponsor state something? Yes, Senator Agara, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Mr. President, tinanong ni Senator Ping, ang tanong po nung the gentleman from Cavite asked, kailan tayo magiging ready? Ang sagot ko po dyan, nandun po sa committee report yung sagot. We will be ready when we can process VAT refunds in 90 days and when we have paid all pending VAT. I think that at least that is our response. That's why we placed that in the committee report.
Mr. President. Suspended. Ano to? Lahat.
ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Before the suspension, we were still on the Section 2223 proposal of Senator Lacson, Mr. President.
The status is that the proposed amendment has not been accepted by the sponsor.
Yes.
So,
If we are to vote, just to raise some clarification, Mr. President, as I was listening attentively to the sponsor a while ago, when he made mention that if you are in the eco zone, tinatawag po na separate customs territory, a sale to entity sa eco zone should be deemed direct export. Is that correct, Mr. Sponsor?
Yes, in legal contemplation, it is a direct export because the Freeport or Eco Zone is considered a separate customs territory.
So sale to the entity should be zero rated?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Mr. President. Thank you.
so how do you proceed?
So is that final as far as the sponsor is concerned? He is not accepting the proposed amendment?
Yes, with apologies to the proponent because the amendment is actually very good. It's just that we differ in the method as how to get there, Mr. President. Yeah. He wants to get there immediately. I think there will be pain along the way, and we're trying to alleviate the pain, Mr. President.
Can we ask the movant his
I
pleasure?
leave it to the body, Mr. President. But I'd like to manifest, depending on the outcome of the voting, I will terminate my individual amendments, the introduction of my individual amendment.
So now the movement is referring it to the body. So this is how we will vote. I will ask first. Ano dapat? Those in favor. A yes is those in favor of the Lacson amendment. No means you are not in favor of the Lacson amendment, and we sustain the rejection of the amendment by the sponsor. Okay. Yes, sir. Senator Recto.
I mentioned earlier, I'd like to be associated with the Lacson Amendment, so if we can call it the Lacson Recto Amendment.
Okay. Yes.
Because baka lalo kami matalo dahil linagay ko yung pangalan ko. But having said that, because these are the same amendments that I do have.
If Senator Lacson doesn't mind. So, okay, so those, Lacson Recto Amendment.
I don't mind calling it Lacson, Recto, Escudero, Soto, Pimentel, Ontiveros amendment.
Senator Drilon.
Mr. President, this is such an important vote because so many other provisions and so many other amendments depend on how the vote comes out here. That's one. Second, in a previous vote, to be candid, there was a confusion because we were not able to, the way the count was accurate, there were some issues that arose out of it. So I therefore move for a nominal voting, wherein a roll call vote is done for this particular issue. So that we vote, each one of us will vote for the record. And not merely raising of hands. We are moving for a nominal voting.
If there is no objection to the motion, okay, we will adopt it. Okay, so there is no objection. We will now vote by roll call vote, and a yes vote sustains or supports the Lacson Recto Amendment. Okay, so Secretary, please conduct the roll call vote. Yes or no? Nominal voting.
The Honorable Senators Gara.
With utmost respect to the proponent and apologies, I vote no.
Aquino, Dinay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon,
Unasan, Monteveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, O, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva.
No, may I explain, Mr. President?
Villar, Soberi, Senate President Pimentel.
No. Let me announce the result. Six affirmative, 12 negative votes. The amendment is lost. Senator Villanueva, you want to explain your vote?
Mr. President, I just want to put on record that this representation supports the suggestion to bring back from 12% VAT to 10% VAT. However, Mr. President, I am voting with the chair to the sponsor to make it explicit in the law, Mr. President, that sale to entities in eco zones is deemed as direct export and treated as VAT zero rated. Spelling it out in the statute will enable consistency, Mr. President, and not subject to changes in the decision of the court. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Lacson?
Yeah, Mr. President, with all due respect, I'm now terminating my introduction of individual amendment.
Thank you very much,
Mr. President.
Thank you much. Majority Leader? Who else has amendments to on section 23 of our draft?